Okay, guys, I got the Daisy 880 here. This is a 2 to 7 by 32 mil dot reticle scope by Hawk on this Daisy 880. And the test I did today was one pump indoors at 15 yards. And I made a trajectory chart, and I'm going to show you guys how to make that trajectory chart the best way you can if you're shooting, even if you're out in the field. The first thing you want to do is make sure they're grouping where you have it zeroed. That's the first step. Then the second step is you want to take another fresh piece of cardboard or paper, and you want to put 4 dots, and you want to label each of these dots at different distances. Like, for instance, I've got 5, 7, 10, 15 yards. You want to shoot that first row, and the reason why you shoot the first row is some shots might fall too low. So shoot the first row, go up to the target, and then add a second row for your next pellet, and then add a third row, and so on and so on. And the reason I did this test is because I wanted to show some of the interesting things about a single pump, about where it has its place. And where it has its place is, say, like pest birds, close range plinking, teaching kids, stuff like that. It could have a lot of applications, even shooting indoors. And the best part about it is it's quiet. So it's very quiet shooting. So anyway, what I want to do is I want to show you 3 different pellets. And if you look up there, that first row there, the first pellet, that's a Crossman, and it's a 7.4 grain pointed pellet, 270 feet per second, 5 yard zero, and you can see the trajectory there. And you want to sight pellets in at 7 yards. That's why I intentionally did this at 5, is because your average, 8 grain pellet or whatever, you want to sight it in for 7 yards to have that flat trajectory for close range shooting. And then you'll have just a little bit of holdover at 15 yards. You might have to hold over, say, like a ½ inch or an inch or whatever. But at least you're going to have flat shooting from 5 to 10 yards where you can have fun and just do plinking. You don't have to worry about dials and knobs and stuff like that. From 0 to 10 yards, you can do your fly shooting or small targets or whatever you're going to do. So anyway, you got that first pellet, one pump, 7.4 grain, Crossman pointed, 270 feet per second. Then if you look down there, you got 7.9 hollow point. Them are the most popular pellets probably on the planet. They're at Walmart. Every Walmart's got them. 7.9 grain hollow point. And notice how well they do too at close ranges. They seem to perform pretty dang good. If you notice the top pellet there, the orange targets, at 10 and 15 yards, the velocity has been lost, and partially the reason for that is you have the head and the skirt of the pellet, and the head of the pellet on these Crossman pointeds doesn't get any rifling, so it's not touching the bore on both sides when it travels through the barrel. So it's kind of wobbly, and it's not really getting a good rifle groove on the head of the skirt. Or on the head, though, not the skirt. Or what I mean is the skirt is getting the rifling, but the head of the pellet, the top of the pellet, isn't getting any rifling. And then you notice the Crossman hollow point there. That one, when you check it in the bore, you'll notice there's rifle marks on the head and the skirt, which means it fits in the bore very well. And that's the reason for the accuracy that you see here. And then also on the bottom there, you got the SIG 8.2 grain match pellet, 240 feet per second. This one here is doing very good also, if you look at the accuracy here. And the dots right here are just a little under a ½ inch, these right here. And then these ones are 3/4 of an inch, these targets right here. So if that gives you an idea. So you'll notice that cheap pellets right here, the ones that you buy at Walmart, the hollow point Crossman pellets, you can have fun with them in the same way that you can have fun with your match grade pellets at close range. But where match grade pellets come in is when you're shooting thousands and thousands of shots and you have higher velocity and longer ranges, because you notice these little marks right here. These are flyers from the Crossman. So never had any flyers or anything from the match grade, but I did with the Crossman pellets. Reason why is because the Crossman pellets aren't match grade. The weights are a little off, and also they have seams, and the way they fit. The seams are them lines on the side of the pellet. because they mass produce these, they stamp them out really fast. So this is how you make the chart, and this is how you shoot. So when you're shooting in the field, let's say that you have a deer rifle or something, and you're shooting at 100 yards, you could do the same thing. You could go 100 yards, 200, 300, 400, and see if you can get 4 MOA at 400 yards and 1 MOA at 100 for your trajectory. But it's a nice thing to do because after you're done, you can draw with a pen like this, the center of each group, and you can tell what kind of trajectory you want. And ideally, you want a flat shooting trajectory. Now, if you're a long range person and you just specifically want to go long range, what you'll end up doing is you'll sacrifice by having a loopy trajectory but having the long range. But of course, with modern air guns and scopes today, the accessories for air guns, just like rifles, you got a mil-dot reticle here. You can just use your mil-dot reticle and find out where the shots are going for each, and you can write them down on a little piece of paper. So when you're out in the field, you'll know what dots you're going to hold onto that target. So that's your hold over and your hold under. So if you look here, you're going to have to hold under on here, and then right here, hold over. So if you have a ½ inch down, that means you have to hold over a ½ inch here. So if you get my point, whatever's down here, the distance from the center to here is what you're going to have to hold over. So that's your hold over. Whereas this is your hold under. You have an inch up here over, then you have to hold under a ½ inch. So if I'm shooting this target, I'm going to hold right about here to hit that target. So if you understand that. Yes, but accuracy, this is a good thing to do because now we know that the cheapest, well, actually, these are both the same price. So if the price is the same, you might as well go for these 7.9 grain hollow points and forget about the pointed, unless you just want to throw away pellets for other plinking purposes. But you notice here, out of this rifle for a single pump, 10 yards, it's not really doing too well. Now, every rifle is different. Rifling is different in every rifle. You have different speeds. You have different tensions. You have different types of chokes on the end. Like this isn't button choked. It's just regular rifling going through. It's shallow lands and grooves. I wish Daisy would put deeper lands and grooves like the Crosman 2100 10-pump rifle, but I guess Daisy hasn't gotten around to it. But they have great rifles and they're reliable. They just have to find a better barrel that can have a little bit better rifling so that the shots at 25 yards can be more accurate. Because I noticed my Crosman 2100, no matter what pellet I use, I'm always going to be having a ½ inch edge over the Daisy 880 at 25 yards. And that means a ½ inch, that could mean 1 inch out to 50 yards advantage with that Crosman 2100. But with the Crosman now, you don't have that felt pad, so you're going to have to make sure that you give that some oil. Same thing with the Daisy. Before you start any test, you want to give it a drop of oil on the pad. You want to fire it a few times dry and clear that oil out. And also, you can clean the barrel for your first part of the test. Then when you switch pellets, what you should do is, if I'm going to switch from pellet number 1 to pellet number 2, if you want to, you could clean the barrel real quick, or what you could do is just fire 3 shots. So throw away 3 shots before you start, because when you switch pellets, you're switching in the lands and grooves that are in the rifling. What you're doing is you're switching depths of where the pellet cuts into the land and groove. So it's kind of like a janitor, like this one's the janitor of this pellet, sweeping out all the crud that this one left behind. So what you want to do is between your sets, you want to run a few through first, then start your next set, stuff like that. All right, so what I want to talk to you about is some observations I made here. And these are observations that I've known for many years, but I'm just going to tell you what they are here. Low velocity means no twist and instability. And that can also go with higher velocity pellets once you break that Mach speed too, and with some pellets. And the Mach speed at my elevation is about 1126 feet per second. And it's different around the United States. People have to understand Mach speed is different with different elevations and even the conditions of the air, like the humidity and stuff like that. So mock speed is going to be a little bit different in different places. Pellet quality, once again, these are Crosman pellets. You can see that the Crosman pellets here did fairly good compared to the SIG 8.2 grain pellets going at 240. So at 10 yards or 15 yards, these cheaper Crosman hollow points, these should be good. At least in my rifle they are for one pump. But when you start pumping it up more and doing 25-yard shots, you're going to notice that that the match grade pellets are going to give you that match grade accuracy that you're looking for. But once again, depends on the speed and depends on the distance and the twist and stuff like that. So another thing, well, once again, pellet quality, the seams on Crosman pellets and the weight issues that they have. They're not match grade pellets, but like I said, you can still have fun with them. 7 yards for average pellet zero. So we want to sight it in at 7 yards so that we get these three distances. So we're going to shoot flat. And this is based off of a duplex reticle. We're not talking about mil dots. If you do have mil dots, you can accommodate for that with your mil dot reticle. Velocity depends on tension, not just weight. Okay, sometimes heavy pellets are faster than lightweight pellets. Why is that? Well, it's because it's how tight the pellet is in the bore. So as the weight goes down, the pellet gets faster. That's true. But sometimes if you don't have tension, like for instance, the 6.5 grain Beeman lasers that came out when I bought them, gosh, over 15, 20 years ago, they were too loose in the bore. So even though they were supposed to be fast pellets, they were actually slower than some of the heavier weight pellets. And I didn't understand why. And I found out that you have to have tension in that barrel with the pellet, with the head and the skirt of the pellet. But you want to have enough tension, but not too much or not too little. So you want to have, that in consideration when you have pellets for your rifle or whatever. Reason for pellet accuracy. Okay, once again, over here I explained that, that the pellet, the head and the skirt have to get rifling, whereas the head wasn't getting rifling. And that's pretty much typical for the pointed Crosman pellets. They don't seat in the bore very well. They're kind of loose at the tip, the head of the pellet or whatever. Reason for waterfall groups. Okay, what I did now is I shot these at 15 yards. You can see what happened here. You can see that some of these are close to zero, like these two, right around a zero at 15 yards and at 5. And like I said, I recommended that 7 yards to flatten out that trajectory. And then obviously you're going to have to hold over a little bit on these, which isn't too bad. Once again, it's low velocity, so you can't expect this to be super long range, although it will go to 35 yards with the lightweight pellet, like a 5 grain. I'll show you what will happen with the 5 grain pellet. Here's your mil dot reticle. It'll end up right about here at 35 yards. So after your turret elevation is almost maxed out. So that's what you can expect out of this rifle. It will shoot 35 yards with a light pellet. I've got video. I think I got a video on that too. So here's what I did. I did a test on a 10.5 Piranha pellet. And this pellet here, 198 feet per second. And what I did is I wanted to show you guys what waterfall groups are. Waterfall groups are when you have a heavy, slow pellet that doesn't get enough twist. And it comes out of the barrel and it's just way too heavy, so it's not going to really perform well. Here's 1, 2, 3, and I had another shot. I think a 4th shot went down here. Waterfall groups are caused when the pellet is too slow. It just doesn't have enough twist and it just doesn't fly right. So here's the group size. Look at that. That's incredibly big. So it means that this pellet is not meant for this distance, this 10.5 grain Piranha. And if you notice that if I cut the distance in half, look at how much the group improves. That's because it does have some stability and some twist when it comes out of the barrel, but only at 7 yards. So if you're shooting out in the field and you notice with a heavy pellet, you're starting to get this kind of a grouping here, it's not because your barrel is going up and down. It's because the pellet isn't meant for that distance. It doesn't have enough velocity to get to that distance. And a lot of you guys that shoot at long range, you're going to find out the same thing. is if your pellets go in a straight up and down waterfall group here, it means that that pellet is just about done. It just doesn't have any twist or any stability because it's just gone way too far and the velocity is too low. And the velocity here is 198. And I found with most pellets that I found doing some research out in the yard at 50 yards is a pellet has got to have at least, I would say, about 300 FPS to have some stability. So you have to remember that. You have to have some kind of speed on that pellet at that distance to get some stability. So that's what happens with a heavy pellet at longer distances. So go back to this one here. Now the other thing I wanted to mention too is the reason why you want to do shot groups and verify with 10 shots is because what will happen is if you're just verifying, say like 3 shots like some guys do for a 0, you might end up with a pretty little, group like this, right? For 3 shots. But then what happens is when you fire the other shots, like 5 shots, you'll go like this, right? And then when you finish the other 5, you end up like this. So what you need to do is you need to fire a 10-shot group to validate your 0. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pull this over. Let's say that this was at 100 yards and this was 1 inch here. So you're going to go, if you have one of them scopes where 1 click is a 1/4 inch at 100 yards or whatever, let's say that this is a 1/4 inch, okay? So it'd be 1 click this direction, and then what would happen is you're going to have all 10 shots. Granted, it's not going to be right in the center, all the shots, but it's going to be around at even spaces like that. So you're going to have even spaces all the way around that crosshair of where the pellet hits, or the bullet right there. So there's 10 shots. So let's say that you're at 1,000 yards and you got a 10-inch group and you got 10 shots. It would look like that. You don't want to go something like this. You don't want to just fire 3 shots and then say, oh, we're all sighted in. Nope, you're not sighted in. You might be at closer range, but at longer range, you have to verify that sight in. Same thing with your trajectories now. If you have a mil-dot reticle and you want to validate these trajectories, you can't just do, on your mil-dot reticle, you can't just do like 3 shots and be done with it. You have to take a number of shots to validate that this is where the impact is going to be when you're looking in your scope. So what I'm saying is you need more shots, and that's unfortunate for rifles because it gets expensive. But, I have a 17 HMR I've been shooting lately, and it's really not that expensive to do shot placements and trajectory validations with that because it's a cheap bullet. Now, if you guys are shooting match grade 308, 6.5 Creedmoor and stuff like that, I hear you, understand. You don't want to use probably 10 shots to validate, but it does make sense depending on the application of what you're doing. If you're shooting like in a match or something, then you're going to have to make sure that all them shots are going in the same place. And you might have to spend some money to make sure that that shot group is tight and that your shots aren't going over here. You might have to spend a little bit of money to do that. And even though rifle cartridges are expensive, I still do the same thing myself. When my 270 Winchester, I'll still fire 10 shots at 100 yards, and sometimes it'll be 1 inch, or something like that. And same thing, you'll have 3 shots here, but then you'll notice the other ones kind of go out a little bit. But the whole point of it is using enough shots so that you know for sure that all them shots are going to land within that 1 inch. So the accuracy of any rifle isn't based on just one trick shot at a long range. If you have a Coke can, you shoot that Coke can at 1,250 yards on YouTube and you go, yee, you celebrate and jump up in the air and tell people you shot a Coke can at 1,200 yards. But here's the thing. How many times did you hit that thing? You hit it once, but then you turned off the camera. What about the other 10 shots? See? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's what your group looks like. So technically the accuracy of your rifle isn't what you can shoot at long distance. It's what the group is. That's why bench rest competition, it was common to have the 10 shot group so that you could tell what the rifle was doing. So that way you could measure the whole group and you could say, all right, that's 10 inches at 1,000 yards. Okay. What will the rifle shoot? It'll shoot 10 inches at 1,000 yards. Now, if you shoot a milk jug at 1,000 yards, let's say you have a milk jug or something. I don't even know. That's not even fat enough for a milk jug. So here you got a milk jug, okay? And you shoot this at 1,000 yards. Let's say you hit it 5 out of 10 times at 1,000 yards. Well, what you really want is you really want consistency. So it would be better if you put that milk jug back at 700 yards and hit it 10 times out of 10 than hitting it 5 out of 10, because it really doesn't prove anything unless you can show people that you're going to have 10 shots landing in the same place. So if you can hit that milk jug 10 out of 10 times, and I'm sure some have done it, then that means that rifle shoots 10-inch groups at 1,000 yards. But I would rather know the rifle's limitations by doing shot groups, 10 shots, so that I know for a fact I know the limitations of my rifle. I know that, for instance, I might not be able to shoot something out here at 1,250 yards 10 times out of 10. But I know that at 700 yards, let's say 600-700 yards a milk jug, if you had one MOA accuracy at 100 yards, at 700 yards, you'd be looking at 7-inch groups? So you'd have 7. So chances are that you would probably hit it all the time. There's been guys online that said they like the 10 for 10 thing also. They want something that they're going to be able to shoot 10 out of 10 instead of just 5 out of 10, or just a one-shot Charlie where you just take one shot and then you shut off the camera and jump up in the air, and then everybody thinks you're a sniper or something because you took out that can. But if you shot like 10 rounds or 15, 20 rounds, this is what the group looks like. Same thing with the guys shooting at a mile or 2 miles, setting these world records. I want to see what the groups look like. I want to see the other 9 shots, but they never show it. They only show that one shot. So, because I want to see what are the 9 shots doing, the other 9, when you hit that target, where were the other shots? How come we don't see that on camera? So that's what I'm saying. There's kind of a sniper fantasy out there where these guys will save only the video that they shoot and where they hit on their best day. And it's good for a guy once in a while to show all the mistakes, that he makes when he's shooting, rather than just save that one clip where he shoots something at 1,200 yards and jumps up in the air. But same thing with hunting too. A guy will take a long shot hunting, but and it's nice to see them long game shots or whatever. But the thing is that you don't know what the rifle's grouping, so it'd be nice to see what it's grouping on paper at them distances, so you know what the consistency of the shot to shot of that rifle is. It's all about consistency. The consistency of the shots, like for instance, if your rifle did 10 shot groups every single time you shot at 1,000 yards, or 10-inch groups with 10 shots, then you could actually say that rifle shoots 10 inches at 1,000 yards. But if you're shooting air rifles now too, and let's say that you shoot a 1/2-inch target at 25 yards, 10 shots, and then you replicate that. You do it again, then you do it again, then you do it again. we could say that that air rifle does half-inch groups at 25 yards, so it's a half MOA rifle. See what I'm saying? But usually a lot of guys won't do that. They'll just take 3 little shots or 2 shots and then start saying that their rifle, oh, I got a 1/4-inch rifle at 25 yards. No, not necessarily. Let's see the other shots. You know what I mean? So, and of course you have wind factor and other different things like that too. But I'm just saying it's nice to validate the accuracy of your rifle and what it does. But anyway, thank you for watching the video, you guys. This is kind of like your, what you would call your long range, short range type thing, where we're duplicating something that's long range, but actually a short range, because you can see that loop. That's that loopy trajectory. So like the guys out in the field at 1,000 yards, what they would have is something like this. You know, like say this is 100, this is 300, 700, 1,000. They would have something like this. I mean, it would be really bowed, you know, really bowed right here, because what they're doing is they're maxing out that turret for that long range. So the trajectory of the bullet isn't going to be shooting flat, but obviously that's why we have mil-dot reticles. So we can always mark, you know, where the shots are going, and then keep the piece of paper. I know some guys will, the scope caps, they'll keep the piece of paper right inside the scope cap. So when you take the scope cap off, you look inside and you'll have a piece of paper with the mil-dot reticle, and it'll tell you where your bullet or your pellet is going as far as the dots on your mil-dot reticle or whatever. So that you know that, say like at 100 yards, I'm 0 here, and then at 200 here, 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 and so on. So you know the exact drop. And they'll even have the inches of the drop. And of course, with the aid of a rangefinder, you can always do that out in the field. Do it at all distances and pre-shoot the area where you're hunting or whatever, including with air guns. Pre-shoot the area where you're normally hunting so that you can write down that data so that you have it in your pocket when you're out in the field. But anyway, thank you very much for watching the video, you guys.